Ayo, what is up everybody? ASUS Samurai 7 here with another Project Zomboid video. And in today's video, we are starting the story of Shane Stevens, who is a retired carpenter that now spends his time running the local bar in town. How long do you think Shane Stevens will last? Make your guess down in the comments down below. One more thing before we get into the video. I will not be watching the daily shows to increase my levels. You'll see in the video, but after not being able to find a TV within the first couple of days, I just committed to the challenge. Anyway, without further ado, sit back, grab some popcorn, and let's get right into the video. The end of the world started while I was on my way to check up on the bar. It was supposed to be a packed house tonight, so the shelves were stocked full with all kinds of various alcohols. While cleaning around the counters, I found my car keys along with some cigarettes and a lighter in the shelves, which I went ahead and grabbed. When I walked outside, I realized I couldn't remember which of the cars was mine. I must have hit my head or something. I don't remember much of anything this morning. The second car was unlocked, but it still wasn't mine. The key wouldn't fit in the ignition. I noticed a car crash down the street, so I made my way over. And I realized one of the wrecked cars was mine. That explains the memory loss. I collected a screwdriver and an empty bottle from the trunk, and the other car key belonged to this zombie. I grabbed another bottle and screwdriver along with duct tape and alcohol wipes from this car. I made my way to the parking lot where I spotted some zombies. Equipping the screwdrivers to my belt, I was ready to fight. I really wanted to get out of this area and find a better place to base up. I went around looking for a car that had a key, but after checking another 4 in the parking lot, I was still empty-handed. The cars seemed in decent condition, so it was even worse that I couldn't find a key. After deciding to check the grocery store for loot, I instantly found a key. I went outside to check which car it belonged to. This one right here. Good condition overall, but now we needed gas. One of the zombies brought a watch over for me, so now I could tell the time. I looked around the store eating peanut butter and yogurt, checking to ensure things were safe. I stumbled upon a storage room stacked with all kinds of food and tools. I equipped a crowbar as my weapon for now, then found a sink to fill up my empty bottles. I didn't want to loot anything from here right away. It would just be a waste of time since I was hoping to skip town anyway. Well, maybe not skip town, but find another part of town that was at least a little bit better than this. All we needed was gas. Spotting a good-looking Jeep down the road, this could definitely have gas. Unfortunately, there was a plethora of dead to get through first. It looks like whoever was here was jumped just trying to change their tire. No gas. The car was locked, so I busted my way in, taking the duct tape, and then continued looking around for more vehicles. There was another one on top of this truck, but it seemed I can't reach it, so I continued onward, eventually stumbling upon a gas station. This was huge. There was definitely gas up here, but I need to get the car here first. Maybe I could fill up one of my bottles, but I think they were filled with water at the time, which I did not realize. There was another Jeep here. I promise I'm not sponsored by them. This one also had no gas, so I made my way inside in hopes to maybe find a gas can. I didn't find one in here, but I did find a map to the town, so now I can see what we're working with a little better. If you didn't know, I'm still pretty new to the game, so I'm not entirely familiar with all the locations around Knox. So if you have any tips, feel free to comment them down below. I ate a sandwich but left most of the stuff here since it was non-perishable. Before returning to the bar, I saw a herd guarding some other vehicles, so I chose not to interfere. I didn't quite feel like going to bed yet, so I went into the farmer's market and did the smartest thing I have ever done. Knowing I wasn't going to be able to carry all the food in my car when I left, and that it would most likely spoil just sitting out here in the open, I grabbed all the perishables and stored them in the fridge. Hopefully this would keep them good for long enough. Then I went into the laundromat and assured it was cleared as well. Once back at the bar, I filled my urges by having a beer. Then I went to bed on the floor. It was the best I could do for now. The next morning I scoped out the town more in depth, figuring out where to set up shop. I wasn't too sure, but this blue building seemed promising. It was pretty big and it looked like it might be 2 stories, but we won't be able to know until we go there. And we won't be able to go there until we find gasoline. So the search continues. I got lucky quickly today though and found a junkyard nearby that would hopefully have fuel. I started with the car on the outside, no fuel but an empty bottle. Then I jumped over the fence and checked the 2 trucks on the inside. One had a measly 5% in the tank. That wouldn't be enough to get going. The next couple of cars were empty, however, until I found a van with a 75% tank. Jackpot. I poured out the water bottles and filled them with gasoline. After that, I went searching around a little bit more and got lucky and found a gas can. So I also filled that with fuel. After returning to my vehicle, I filled it up with as much as I could, smoked a cigarette after, and then returned to the bar where I dismantled watches I've been collecting along the way. Then I started bringing my alcohol from inside to my car. I can't leave that behind. After the shelves were emptied, I took one last look at the bar, what I spent so many years building up and making it successful. All gone and there was nothing I could do about it. I had to get to a safer location. I had a few more stops before that though. First, to the grocery store. Where I grabbed food, tools, seeds, and also found a backpack. Once the food was in the car, I went back in to rip up clothing for ripped sheets, and we could find a needle we could start padding up our clothes. I was extremely tired by this point, so I decided to take shelter here for the night. I checked my map one last time before tomorrow to ensure I had a plan in mind. I wanted to drive up the road to check out the buildings up north, and then head back down to what I assumed was a school, but we'll see how that goes when the time comes and we are actually in action. Anyway, now it's time for sleep. I got an early start to the next morning. I found a pin yesterday, so I marked a couple things on my map, including a marker to remind me we have food stored here, and then drove towards the junkyard to get the rest of the gas. Now the area was cleared, I transferred the gas from the van to my car. Before I left though, I searched the rest of the cars, coming away with crafting materials, meds, but no more gas. So I started my journey to find a new goal. I checked the map one last time and set off. After taking the scenic route around town, I found myself at the school. This could be the perfect base location, but it would take some work to turn it into a home. I didn't want any windows to break, but once I realized the doors were locked, the zombies bursted through anyway. I checked out the Mini Coupe in the parking lot and the truck, with the latter being in perfect condition with almost a full tank of gas. While checking out the last car, I alerted a couple zombies to my location. I was really tired at this point from waking up so early, so I was barely doing any damage to the zombies. Once that group was taken care of, I returned to my car to sleep before trying to clear out the school. Once I had caught up on my sleep, it was time to clear the school out. I wasn't too concerned about the loot around here, I'll get that all later. For now, I just wanted to be sure we wouldn't get jumped while sleeping inside. I eventually came across the nurse's office, so I took a break while reading some of the medical magazines stored inside. After the quick pit stop, I stumbled upon the kitchen, where a zombie was able to get me with a scratch. I bandaged up and started moving the perishables to the fridge so they wouldn't spoil. Hearing some banging on a door nearby, I looked around to find the source. After taking care of the dead, I smoked a cigarette to calm down. I made my way to the front door of the school where zombies had busted through the window. Not good. The crowbar was doing its job and the office was now cleared. The next room was a storage room, and then a teacher's room. Now that the bottom floor was entirely cleared out, it's time to move up. Up here was mainly just classrooms, but I did find a pistol in one of the dead. This storage room up here also had roof access. We might be able to do something up here in the future. When I walked back downstairs, a rogue zombie made their way in. So I took this as a sign and cleared around the building as well. I now felt a little safer, but once I had walked inside, I saw another had roamed in, which got me a little more nervous. Not wanting to rush just yet, I decided to move all the gear from the car, and after doing that for a little while, I went to sleep. The next day I started by laying out the guns I've accumulated so far, just 2. And then while I was doing a scan of the building, I noticed some Rugers had left their way in while I was asleep. Now that I knew no one would be sneaking up on me, I started dismantling desks from the classrooms to collect the wooden planks. I wanted at least one row of them on the bottom floor, especially on the broken windows. For now, I threw everything from inside the desk onto the floor. I'll look through it later, but right now I was just worried about being protected. I started by placing them on the inside, but after I figured a zombie could come by and break the window, I went on the outside so I could fight them off before they did. Thankfully, I'd also found a few boxes of nails. Then I started getting hungry, so I ate some stale food from the cafeteria and went back to work on another classroom. After the planks were gathered, I went back out, and when I got to the cafeteria, a group was banging on the glass. This was unfortunate since my inventory was filled with planks. I tried to drop them, but I couldn't do it quick enough, so I had to fight back with a full inventory. By the time I overcame them, 2 had busted through the glass. When I ran around the corner, I accidentally jumped through, cutting my hands on the broken shards. Even though I had an injury, I was able to kill the remaining threats and then bandaged up my hands. Noticing the scratch from earlier had disappeared, I felt a little hopeful. Before jumping back out, I removed the glass and then got back to work boarding up the windows. Once that set of planks was burnt through, I ate some pizza from the fridge and made my way into what I guess I'll call my room for now, and went to sleep. I woke up the next day by putting some patties in the stove for breakfast and grabbed some magazines out of the library while we waited for our meal. Once finished, I ate one and put the remaining 3 in the fridge. At this point, it occurred to me I hadn't started a finished books corner yet, so I read a magazine, which will be the beginning of the new pile. After that, I decided to get back to work boarding up the windows. While walking down the hall to go get more planks, I checked my hands from earlier and the cuts had now cleared up. After making a little more progress on the windows, I ate another patty from earlier and noticed another zombie had made their way inside. I went around grabbing all the magazines from inside the library. Some of these would teach me useful recipes, so I wanted to go ahead and read them. I sat down on the reading mat and got started. Once I was finished with them all, they were added to the finished books corner. I grabbed Electrician Volume 1 to start reading in my downtime, so I can dismantle watches and other electronics for more XP. But before I went to sleep, I read a comic to help with my depression, and got through the entire Electrician book. I was not expecting that, so I was going to go ahead and add it to the pile when a zombie caught my eye. A couple more were stationed in the gym. At this point, I was too tired to try to take them all on at once, and really just too confused at where they were coming in, so I went to sleep for now. The next day was started with a cigarette, and then I went to take care of the situation. Once done with that, I went around grabbing useful items from the classrooms. Anything I could read, eat, or use for building or repairing my tools. On my walk down the hall, I went to fill up my water bottles when I heard the scary sounds of the water getting ready to shut off. I had a few bottles saved up as well as a water cooler in the office. That should be enough for now until we can make rain collectors. Now finished with the electrician book, I needed a new one to start reading. I walked around the library looking for my next carpentry book so I could start reading it whenever. I then went to the kitchen for a bite to eat. While eating, I remembered I never finished cleaning out the car, so I went back out to the parking lot to continue doing so. After my first trip, apparently tons of zombies followed me back. They didn't have much on them, so I continued with clearing out the car. But I got sidetracked again and found a huge water bottle in the main office. So I placed it on the desk as to not forget about it. Which, as you know, I do a lot. When I was about to go back out to the car, I heard the helicopter making its way towards me. Thankfully, it caught me at a decent time, so I went to the bathroom of the teacher workroom and did some reading. Once the coast was clear, I went around the school clearing out the ones who found their way inside. Then I added the carpentry book to the pile, ate a beef patty for dinner, and then went to sleep. Starting where we left off on the morning of day 8, last week we escaped the bar and made our way to our new home, the school. There was still a lot of work to do before this place was safe, and that was made perfectly clear when I noticed more zombies had snuck inside. At least 2 outside doors were still broken, so to stop them from coming inside, we need to repair them. But before we do anything, I need to get some food in my stomach. So I put bacon in the stove to cook while I went outside to clear some roamers that had migrated over. I accidentally took a little too long doing that, and when I got back, my bacon had burnt. But I ate it anyway. Now full, I continued surveying the bottom floor, taking out any zombie I came across. I noticed myself getting queasy, and since I hadn't been bit, I know it was from the rotting corpses all around me. I started moving some of the bodies outside and then dismantled all of the desks in the room for planks. Along the way, I leveled up my carpentry to level 5. I used the gathered planks on the windows to prevent any more zombies from breaking in. I got all the way to the front of the school and then ran out of planks. When I noticed a broken door across the street, I went over to collect the parts and searched the house while I was there. Inside, I was still able to fill up my water even though it had shut off. I guess you're able to use the last few drops inside the pipes. And right as I was about to go across the street, I spotted a horde in our yard next door. Not being too tired yet, I decided to go ahead and take them out. Once they were all looted, I returned home to clean out more corpses inside. The entrance to the school was particularly covered, and with my bedroom being so close, I wanted to get the smell gone. And after that, I dismantled some electronics, had a cigarette, and then noticed more zombies inside. This is getting annoying. We need to put a door up. For dinner, I ate a chicken breast and put an extra beef patty in the fridge before heading off to sleep. For breakfast on day 9, I ate ice cream. Kids, take notes. This is the best way to start your day. After shoving the sweet delicacy down my throat, I ventured upstairs to start today off by dismantling one of the classrooms for planks. Along the way, I found a comically large big pen, then realized it has max damage. I won't be using it as a weapon though, since it's a mod and pretty unrealistic if you ask me. By 10:30, the entire room was ready, and I went to make the door outside the cafeteria. This hallway has become a corridor for zombies to roam down. There were so many corpses here, so for the next couple hours, I took the bodies from inside and put them outside. For lunch, I had the leftover patty from last night. Then after eating, I returned to grab more planks to finish boarding up the windows. I'll take that motorcycle helmet. We had one more door to construct before we'd be fully protected, so I grabbed planks and set them there for when we eventually found more parts. By this point, I was starting to get tired and didn't want to go outside, so I went through searching some lockers where I found a slingshot. We might need to try that out sometime. After setting the slingshot on the gun table, and used one of the vending machines to house the ammo, I went upstairs to search more lockers, this time coming away with food, a jar of marbles for the slingshot, drinking bottles, electronics to scrap, paintballs, and a ninja star. I don't know why these children have so many weapons in their lockers, but I'm not going to complain. Once the items were all stored where I wanted them, it was time to go to sleep. The next day I started by placing some extra bottles on my table. I've been collecting bottles empty or full just so water is never an issue in the future. I ate some food, then I was ready to clear out any nearby roamers. I made my way to a house with a truck in the driveway. Inside, I collected crafting materials, a good amount of food, sewing supplies, and a new pair of gloves to trade for my own. I also started collecting curtains to cover the windows of the school and dismantled doors inside. Along my journey back home, I realized a group had gathered in front of my door. I was encumbered now, so I went around to the front of the school instead. Once I had cleared my inventory and made the other door, I completely forgot about the threat outside and cleared out my car the rest of the way. I guess the zombies outside never heard me because they left me alone for the rest of the night, even when I went to sleep. When I walked outside on the morning of day 11, a new herd had migrated into the bus loop. wanted to start looting more houses now that the school was pretty safe, and we need more food to be able to continue to survive. In this house, I grabbed a magazine, more curtains, medical supplies, and a towel to dry off my sweat. The kitchen had a load of food inside. I also grabbed a griddle so we can make stir fries back at home, and then I exited the house to store our freshly acquired goods. I ate some of the ham I found for lunch, and knowing I needed to find a generator before the power shut off, I started looking around for houses with sheds to hopefully find one. The first one I checked out, I came up empty-handed, but did find a gas can. I decided to go ahead and loot the house while we were here. Unfortunately, it was being moved out of, so there wasn't much loot here. I did come away with some sheets, farming supplies, and planks, however. Once back to safety, I deposited my gear and went around placing sheets on the windows. After that, I used the planks from the house to reinforce some of the exterior. I read a magazine and smoked a cigarette to cure my anxiety, before eating the rest of the ham for dinner. There was still plenty of corpses all over the halls, so I spent the next couple of hours before bed clearing out some more. After some time had passed, I heard zombies knocking on the cafeteria window that needed to be killed. Well, killed again. One had a fiberglass arrow that I took, and after that hard day, I grabbed some bourbon from the kitchen and returned to my room to drink away my sorrows. I haven't been drinking too much during the apocalypse, but now that we had doors all around and the windows were boarded up, I finally felt safe enough to drink. If you're enjoying this video, consider leaving a like. It's quick to do and really helps out the channel. I'll give you a few seconds to do so go ahead. I'm waiting. Anyway, thank you for the support, and let's get right back into the video. Once the sun had risen, I was going to continue my search for a generator, but discovered a nice looking truck instead. The doors were locked and there was no key around. The mechanics looked pretty good and it even had enough gas to get us back to the school. I opened up the window to the house and began my search. Hopefully the key was in here. The kitchen was home to a bunch of food, which we needed, but also the key to the truck was inside. I went out, started it, and brought it back home. While adding sheets to the front door, zombies came knocking. Since I haven't found a key to this blue truck, I transferred the gas from it to my new one. If you don't remember from the last video, this truck had almost a full tank of gas. When I was done with that, I went ahead and started dinner. And while that was cooking, I moved some of the zombies back outside. After I finished my dinner, I drank a beer to help it go down, then went back to work clearing out some zombies. Once I was finally tired enough, I returned to my bedroom to go to bed. I started day 13 off with a cigarette and grabbed a body on my way to the kitchen to dispose of. There were only a few more left inside by this point, so let's go ahead and put them out. After finishing up with that, it was time for breakfast. I read a little while I was cooking and then continued cleaning out the bodies. Now the bottom floor was completely clear, and there's only a few more upstairs to collect. But right as I was walking upstairs, I realized you could disassemble these payphones. So I did. By the time I got up there, I was already so sidetracked, I cleared out some classrooms, dismantling electronics along the way. I found a gun in one of the kids' lockers, still not going to ask any questions. Then I remembered what I was actually here for. So I grabbed the last zombie's body and threw it outside. Hopefully we won't get sick again. Before heading to bed, I drank a beer and did some reading. The last day of the second week was now upon us. To start out, I went to the library to cure my boredom and finished up tailoring volume 1 while I was there. I really wanted a generator before this week was over. That was my one goal, so I stepped outside to begin my hunt, but it was super foggy. I checked my map to see where to go and headed out with limited visibility. The first 2 cars were empty, but when I came across the next crash, I found a gun case and gas in one of the cars. Eventually, as we were arriving to the shed, the fog started clearing out. That was a good sign, because inside the shed was a generator. just what I was looking for. There was also a propane tank and planks in here, but for now I grabbed the generator and headed back home to place it outside. If you're not aware, never place a generator inside, it will basically cause you to die. I used the extra planks to reinforce the broken windows, and then got in my truck and headed back over to where we were to grab the propane tank. I got distracted on the way and noticed the Gigamart had a bunch of trucks in the parking lot. Me being from a rural small town, I love me a good truck. Before I checked them out though, I siphoned the gas from the crashed car on the road. The beds of the first two trucks had a heavy duty tire and a jerry can that I took. I figured we may eventually need a spare tire, and this jerry can would be perfect for carrying loads of extra gas. The first truck didn't have any, but the second had 77% of a tank, which filled the jerry can all the way up. The logging truck was locked, but also had a bunch of gas inside. And the next truck had electrical equipment in the back, and the last was just filled with junk. I broke my way into the logging truck to try to unlock the back, hoping for wood inside, but I couldn't seem to unlock it. The red box truck also wouldn't let me in the back, but when I broke into the white truck, I was able to find another gun case inside the glove box. I wanted to grab the rest of the gas, but since we were filled to the brim, I returned home for now, where I put some of the fuel into the generator and had a bite to eat. I remembered we had another gas can in the car, and while I was grabbing that, I didn't realize we had another one in the trunk. I put them all in the back of the truck for now, since it was starting to get late. I started filling up some of the bottles in the bathroom sink, but I figured we should also be able to get water from the toilet as well, which we are. I don't think water is going to be a big issue right now, since we have our giant water bottle and the water cooler, but I wanted to have enough just in case, even if it was toilet water. I was proud of myself for making it to a fortnight. Not in the game. If you don't know, a fortnight also means 14 days. So I had some wine to celebrate before heading to sleep. Yeah. Starting off week 3, I had a smoke while I figured out what I wanted to do. Today I wanted to return to the food market we discovered in the first week to collect the food we left there before it spoiled. Prior to leaving though, I ate some breakfast. Then it was time to head off. I drove by many herds along the way that I just ignored for now. Once I arrived in the parking lot, I secured the area. When I started looting, I remembered how much non-perishable food was also here. With all of this and what we had back at home, we should be good for quite a while. But more food could never hurt. So I wanted to check out the grocery store while we were here as well, since I think there's still food left in the storage room. I knew I wasn't crazy. The truck was filled with so much food, I had to store some in the passenger seat so I wasn't encumbered on the drive home. Once home, I spent the next few hours storing all the food we found, and used some of it to prepare a stir fry for dinner. When I was finished up, I grabbed a beer to drink and headed to my room for the night. I woke up the next morning with a slight neck pain, probably from sleeping on the couch for the past 2 weeks. But I had other things to worry about before making a bed, like boarding up the windows a little more to help with my real-life anxiety from dying from a zombie that snuck inside. So that's what I did today. I went upstairs and dismantled desks for planks. But before I boarded up the window, I decided to make 2 rain collectors, since I hadn't made one yet. Now we really never needed to worry about water. For lunch, I finished up the stir fry and started boarding up the windows outside. Thanks for this crowbar. Now exhausted, I'd made my way to the kitchen to make some chicken for dinner while I read up on some mechanics. Although we were tired, I didn't feel like going to bed quite yet, so I started sorting out the library, putting all the books on their own shelf and magazines on theirs. Doing this is going to save so much time so I don't have to go around trying to find each new book. Instead, I can just walk to this one bookshelf and see everything we have. I got sidetracked doing this and didn't reach my bed until midnight. The next morning I noticed my water bottle was almost empty, so after I ate some breakfast I went and filled it up. Today I wanted to go back to the trucks from last episode. I was told in the comments that we could unlock the trunks with a separate lock on the door. Once I arrived, I started with the logging truck, collecting woodworking gear and tools for mechanics inside. I went ahead and filled up gas cans and found fishing supplies in the red box truck. Before I left, I noticed a horde that I went ahead and cleared out while we weren't tired. Once they were dead, I figured I should grab the propane tank while we were here. And there were more zombies over there. When I arrived back at the school, even more zombies were waiting outside. After taking them out, it was time to unload the truck. On finishing that up, I started a pork chop for dinner and smoked a cigarette. Once I was done eating, I took a bottle of wine and retired to my room for the night. Day 18 began by me checking my stats. I'm almost at 300 zombies killed, but my skills could be a little better for this point in the game. But remember, I didn't watch the television shows on the first week, so we aren't too bad considering that. I finished off the white wine from last night and smoked a cigarette. Just as I was finishing that, the power shut off. We were prepared for this though, so I ran outside to the generator, connected it, and turned it on. Then I ate some chicken for breakfast. Since the electricity is now off, I knew the food at the Gigamart wouldn't stay fresh for long, so I made my way over to loot it. Luckily, not many zombies were inside. Once they were not a threat anymore, I started looting all the food, even grabbing a mousetrap. Most of the food in the deli was already rotten, but there was more non-perishable food in the back as well. At 2 p.m., I made my way back to the school since we had now filled the truck up entirely. For most of the night, I spent my time sorting the food and other loot that we collected. I took a few beer bottles to my room to drink and read a First Aid Volume 1 book for the rest of the night. I set up the mousetrap the following morning. I wasn't going to eat them yet, but maybe we can level up our trapping skill or use them as bait for bigger animals. But now, we are bored, so I went to the library to read a magazine and then ate some breakfast after. Today, I wanted to return to the Gigamart to continue looting the store. There was still shelved items there that I couldn't collect last night. Along the way, I stumbled upon electrical items I could dismantle for experience and a bunny collectible that I'll put somewhere back at home. When I arrived back home, the next few hours were spent sorting out the food. At least we would have enough for a while. And when I finished up with that, I continued reading my first aid book before going to sleep. When I tried to get breakfast on day 20, I heard a zombie somewhere banging on a door. There was nothing outside, but when I saw the window was broken, I realized the zombie was inside. Before I could do anything about this, I went back to the Gigamart one last time to finish it off. While here, I made my way upstairs to ensure there wasn't anything good up here, which there wasn't. Before I went back home, I decided to loot the parking lot behind the grocery store. I found another gas can, then another, but none of the vehicles here were unlocked or had any gas inside. In this truck, I found yet another gas can and a gun case with a flare gun inside that we could possibly use to lure away a horde. Then when I broke my way in, I found another gun case, this time with a real gun. I really wanted to check out this gas trailer. Hopefully it'll be full and we never have to worry about it again. But this time, we weren't as lucky and it was completely empty. But there was an ATV right beside it, and when I checked it out, it was stacked with loot. 2 duffel bags of food, 2 gun cases, I'll see what's in them later, a giant water bottle, a firebomb, primers, 2 arsenal bombs, and a pipe bomb. Wow. But before I left, I looted the logging truck, which had a chainsaw, a heavy-duty tire, and 2 logs. Now we can head back home, where I checked out the guns. Let's go, 2 crossbows. Now I can bring out my inner Daryl Dixon. After eating a burrito for dinner, it was time to catch up on some sleep. The next morning, I took one of the crossbows and added the rifle sling to it and threw it over my shoulder. Now we can have a silent weapon help increase our aiming skill. I smoked a cigarette on the way to the kitchen where I prepped a stir fry for breakfast. Now that we had a bunch of food, we can use it to help with our depression and boredom as well, by adding more ingredients to the meals. Before week 3 was over, I wanted to reinforce the outside windows a little more, especially since a zombie broke in yesterday. I wanted at least 2 planks on each of the windows, so I spent almost the entire day doing so. Only stopping to eat and smoke. When I was done, I had 1 extra plank that I used in the cafeteria door. We only really used the kitchen door, so I wanted to add a little extra protection to this one. While outside, I added more fuel to the generator and went ahead and left the jerry can next to it. Then I finished reading First Aid Volume 1 and ate the rest of the stir fry for dinner. One last zombie wanted to be added to the kill count before this video was over. But after that, I retired to my room. With 309 kills, Shane Stevens survives for another week. Starting off where we left things in the last video, on the morning of day 22, I began by heading into the library to grab a fresh battery for my flashlight. Since the power had shut off in the last video, it's our only way to see in the dark now. As I was making my way to the kitchen to grab breakfast, I noticed the hallway door had now been destroyed. When I reached outside, I saw 2 zombies knocking on the cafeteria door. Once they were killed, I figured out what I needed to build another door: a plank, nails, and door parts. We should have everything. But as I was checking out the truck for 1 more plank, I saw a massive herd right outside the school. Not even taking a second thought, I decided to go take them out before they came for me. Along the way, I tested out my crossbow, only hitting a few shots. Eventually, I noticed an error code at the bottom of my screen, so I tried to restart my game to get rid of it, but it was persistent. It wouldn't go away. So for the whole video, there's going to be a red number that keeps increasing. Unless I exited out the game, then it'll start back at 0, but then keep going. You get the drift. When I spawned back into the game, I broke into this blue car in the driveway, which had gardening supplies in the trunk. While I was here, I decided to go ahead and loot the house, but of course it was rigged with a house alarm. As soon as I heard it, I ran back towards the school so I was protected from the rear, and continued killing while the dead were being lured to the house. After a while of exterminating the Zeds, I hopped through the window of a neighboring house to loot it. Luckily, I found the plank needed for the door, along with some food. The next house to this one had a broken back door, so I went to grab the parts and inside realized what the error code most likely was. Probably due to a mod I have downloaded or something, but I don't know. On my way home from looting, as I was about to turn the corner to get back home, another herd was in the street blocking my way. At this point, I had already done so much killing today, I was exhausted, not to mention I had a lot of loot on me as well. I was able to back away without many of them seeing me, so I lured them to a fence where they met their demise. And then I smoked a cigarette after and snacked on peanut butter. And instead of going around the fence, I decided to just go ahead and hop over it. After a couple tries, I was successful. But I was so wore out by the day, at this point, I didn't even construct the door tonight. The next morning, since we had finished the tailoring book now, I added padding to my clothes, using the spare rope sheets I'd collected in the past weeks. Eventually, when I ran out of thread, I returned to the outside, now a little safer. Thanks for the gun. The alarm had attracted so many zombies inside, and once they were cleared out, I was able to find food inside. Then after killing a few more zombies, I returned home to make the hallway door, and when I got there, the cafeteria door had been destroyed as well. I used all the parts I had to make the hallway door, then went upstairs to dismantle other doors to get the rest. Then I made a stir fry for dinner. Upon finishing up, I returned to my bedroom to do some reading prior to heading to sleep. I ate more of the stir fry for breakfast the next morning, then put away the crossbow. I'd used up all the arrows yesterday, so there was no point in carrying it around anymore. I instead put a pistol in my holster for emergencies. I also marked a couple places on my map that I've looted, and had an incident with the pin, making a bunch of X's. The mousetrap inside hadn't caught anything yet, so I placed it outside. Maybe it'll have better luck out here. I also wanted to start increasing my mechanics skill. With one of the tires being a lot worse than the others, I decided to go ahead and try to replace it. After I put the new one on, I ate lunch and smoked a cigarette. Then I went for a test drive and the tire fell right off. The only difference between this tire and the other tire was this one wasn't a performance type, so maybe that caused it to get loose. I put the old tire back on for now and I decided to go on an adventure through the fences right here. I expected a herd to be on the other side since the house alarm probably lured a bunch over, but there were less zombies than I expected. After they were cleared out, the first place I checked out was a laundromat. I took some soda from the vending machine and used a bunch of towels to dry myself off. When I finished up, I marked it off on my map and walked to the next spot, which was a hardware store. Inside, I grabbed welding equipment, farming supplies, carpentry gear, and a lot more. Before I left inside, I dismantled flashlights, accidentally scrapping mine in the process. The next two buildings didn't really have much inside for us, but the fire truck in the street had a couple of good things. After that, I returned to my truck and headed home for the night. Once I had stored all the loot inside, I ate a bunch of random things for dinner because I didn't feel like cooking anything. Then I read a couple of magazines and smoked a cigarette to clear some of my moodles before heading to bed. I spent the first few hours of day 25 reading Mechanics Volume 1. When I finished that, I made a taco for lunch. I wanted to put some bacon on it, and while that was cooking, I grabbed one of the pots from outside to boil as well. When I finished eating the taco, I poured the water into the empty bottles, then placed the pot back outside. I took a gas can from the truck, then realized although we still had a few cans, we were starting to run a little low, and we needed to find another generator to be able to power the gas station. Before I went searching though, I used planks from yesterday on some of the windows. I don't know why I decided to loot a house to find a generator, but easy to say, I didn't find one in this first house. When I got back to the safety of the school, I read some magazines I found along the journey, an electronics, and a hunter one. For dinner, I prepared soup using a pot of water we found earlier and leveled up my cooking during the process. I also grabbed another bucket of water from outside to purify it while the soup was cooking. Although we weren't close to running out of water, more will never hurt. After eating the soup, I decided to go to sleep a little early tonight. Today, I needed to find a generator. No more searching house by house. I'm going to just look for a shed and hope for the best. When I got outside though, it was extremely foggy. So until the fog cleared, I spent time taking apart the Chevy truck in the parking lot for spare parts. Once the fog cleared, I checked my map and plotted my route. Along the way, I collected a propane tank from a grill for my welding adventures later in life. The first shed I came to had a locked front door, but when I went around, I could see a generator inside through the window. There was also a gas can in the shed, along with a chain. I don't know what that's used for. The house had medical items, another gas can, and food in the kitchen. Now that our mission was successful, I headed back home. On the way home, I noticed a couple zombies getting close to the school. Once they were cleared out, I went to drive around and realized more dead had broken in already. I was angry at this point, so I took to the streets and started yelling to the top of my lungs, but no zombies came. When I returned back, I dismantled a lunch table to use for the new door and finished the soup for my dinner. Then I went to the library to finish Mechanics Volume 1 and add it to the finished books corner, before heading off to bed. Started day 27 off with a smoke and stale potatoes for breakfast. Then I went out to my truck and headed off for the gas station. But when I opened my map, a giant red square had appeared. Weird. Along the way, I saw a survivor's house, so I stopped to loot it. I barricaded the window, broke it, and then hopped in. After sweeping the house, I started looting, coming away with loads of melee weapons, medical supplies, and non-perishable food. I also found an eraser that I was able to get rid of the mistakes on my map. When I got to the gas station, there were tons of zombies waiting for me. When we started becoming exhausted, I took a second to eat some food, but we had to clear the rest out, so I got back to work. Finally, it was time to hook up the generator. I placed it down, filled it up, and gave it power. Now we can have an easy supply of gas. I filled up all the cans we had collected, then turned off the generator to save up on the gas. Before heading home, I knew the store itself had non-perishable food inside that we left here, so I went in and got all of the candy and other gas station food. I also found a stack of magazines and newspapers I took home since we were starting to run a little low in our library. It took me until almost midnight to sort through everything we found today, so when I eventually did, I went to sleep. Now that it was day 28, we had already gotten so much done this week, I decided to have a chill day. First, I filled up our generator using the freshly acquired gas, then made a stir fry for breakfast using some of the mass amounts of eggs we had. Now that we had some food in our stomach, I went to the library to read Metalworking Volume 1 until it was finished. Then I drank some red wine and celebrated our 4th week survived, then realized one bottle of red wine was clearly not enough to celebrate. So I went to my room with even more alcohol, breaking my sitting mod along the way. After 28 days, we've killed 478 zombies. This episode was about half of them. Starting off this week, I went outside to clear the perimeter. While on my way around, I grabbed a bucket of water at the front door to boil. The outside was clear, so I sterilized the water and had the rest of the stir fry from last episode for breakfast. Once I had used up all the water from the bucket, I placed it back outside. When I got back in, I checked what we needed to extend the chain link fence over to cover the generator, since in the previous couple of episodes, we've been having a bunch of zombies breaking the door. We needed at least metalworking 4. That might take a little while. So to keep the dead out for the meantime, I dismantled all the lunch tables for wooden planks. That's a lot of planks. But before I used the planks on the windows, I whipped up a stir fry for dinner. And then spent the rest of the night ensuring each of the exterior windows had 3 planks on them. Day 30, I figured it would be a good time to start leveling up my welding skill. Since we now had all the tools we needed, we were ready to work. Before that though, I took the water dispenser from the administrator's office and placed it in the kitchen so we could more easily put water inside. I decided the best place to start dismantling things would be the classrooms, so I headed in to take apart the chairs. When I finished up in the first room, I started to become hungry, so I made my way to the kitchen when I noticed the hallway door was once again destroyed. But when I went outside, there was no zombies to be seen. Weird. I went back in to look around and still couldn't find any anywhere. So I rebuilt the door and figured out what to eat for lunch. The milk was going bad soon, so I went ahead and drank it for the calories. And after that, I headed to the library to clear out my noodles from the boring food. While inside the library, I dismantled the chairs in here, leveling up my metalworking to level 1. After putting away the gear, I headed outside to do some looting. I was out here for curtains and any magazines or other reading material to clear away noodles, since we had started to run a little low. Eventually, when I returned back from the fruitful looting haul, our school had been bombarded with zombies, and this time they had broke the planks on the windows too. Before I went to bed, I got the parts to construct a new door and added sheets I collected today on the windows, along with a few planks for extra protection. After not getting into bed until after midnight the previous day, I woke up around noon. I received a comment saying, since I did not watch any of the television shows the first week, I can get a TV and tapes from the movie store to help increase my levels a little quicker. So I headed off for the strip mall. When I arrived at the strip mall, a lot more zombies were there than I expected. I almost went down while fighting, but I came away with only a laceration. I bandaged it up, but there was no escaping this horde. They would be in my truck instantly if I tried to escape, so I was forced to fight my way out. I had completely circled them all, most of the horde was done. There were only a few stragglers left. When I got inside the video store, I went around grabbing the tapes labeled with specific episode numbers. I'm pretty sure these are the ones that give you XP. While here, I collected a popcorn machine and TV for our movie area. I wanted to loot the other shops while we were here. The next one was a restaurant. The kitchen was mostly rotten food, but I was able to grab some spices and condiments to add to my food. When I exited the kitchen, I found a back hallway which allowed me to access the other 3 shops. The first one being a film studio, where I spent my time dismantling the cameras inside. I completely skipped over the chiropractor's office when I saw the liquor store on the end. I collected all of the various alcoholic products inside, all the way into night. So when I eventually arrived home, I hopped straight into bed, after drinking a few beers of course. I once again woke up late the next morning, so I figured I'd stay in today. I first tried to sew up my laceration, but for some reason I wasn't able to. I may have not had everything in my inventory. I couldn't remember if I had left a gas can at the generator, so I grabbed a jerry can anyway and drove around. And of course there were zombies banging on the door. While the truck was over here, I unloaded the loot from the previous day, the popcorn machine and TV I placed in the library, but forgot the room had no access to power. I'm thinking I might try to put the generator on the roof in the next week to see if that'll power the entire base. I've been wanting to get power to my bedroom since it's quite dark in there. For now though, I prepared a stir fry using as many non-perishable foods as possible. While it was cooking, I used the time to sterilize more water. Before heading to my room, I grabbed some beer and read over Farming Volume 1 in the library. Day 33 began with a check of my stats. Now we're over 1 month survived. That's crazy. I smoked a cigarette, then began my day. I started by going into the storage closet to collect seeds to plant. Also grabbed a garden hoe, and then went outside where I started digging up plots to plant. I searched up off camera, and apparently Project Zomboid doesn't yet have a weather system that affects crops. So you can plant them year round, as long as you have water. So I planted cabbage, radish, strawberry, and tomatoes. When I finished up with farming for the day, I went to the kitchen to clean out the rotten food inside. For now, I just put it outside in the trash can, but I hope to make a composter in the next video to use it for fertilizer. Before the day was over, I decided to head out to search some houses. I collected curtains, non-perishable food, and a hiking bag in the master bedroom. This was better than the current backpack I had, so I swapped them out and then finished in the house with a garage. The next house across the street was boarded up, meaning there would be many weapons inside. So after breaking my way in, there were many zombies. It looks like they were held up here and one of them got infected. They were trying to keep out the zombies, but they should have been worried about what was inside. I decided to only take the best of the weapons, since we now had a decent amount back at home as well. Either way, we'll have way more than we need. Before I finished up, I grabbed a gas mask off a shelf as well, and then when I got back home, it was already late, so I drank some stale milk from the kitchen before it spoiled, and then went to bed. The next day I began by clearing out some lockers in the hall. I'll use these to store melee weapons from our haul yesterday. While grabbing the loot, I equipped the gas masks, making Shane Stevens look even more badass. Once everything had been stored away, I prepared a soup for dinner, using a pot of water from outside. After eating some of the freshly made food, I headed out to loot the last house of the cul-de-sac, which was another survivor's house. Once the outside threats were cleared, I hopped through the bathroom window, where I grabbed medical items. The bedroom had another gas mask and a bulletproof vest. There were plenty of zombies inside, but along with that, a load of weapons. But the last cabinet I looted had an M249E3 rifle, a Makarov pistol, and another rifle. When I went outside, a group of zombies were headed my way, with the head honcho of the group bringing me a shotgun. Now if we find 12 gauge shells, I can more easily level up our aiming skill. When I went back inside, I found a cool looking axe that deals max damage. I equipped it, hoping it would be even better than my crowbar. Before I returned home, I marked off the houses on my map. Then when I finished up all of my nightly duties, it was time for sleep. Now it was day 35. I was excited to be at the end of the week. I started the day by grabbing my sledgehammer and breaking a hole in my bathroom wall. This way I can make a door so I no longer have to run all the way around the halls to get here. If you have any other suggestions for the base or home improvement ideas, feel free to comment them down below. When I went to grab food, I realized the milk had already spoiled, just as I thought. I finished clearing out the truck so I could go on one more run before the week was up. The final day of the week I usually take pretty chill, but today I figured why not go out anyway. I wasn't even out here to loot, I just wanted to kill some zombies. The first zombie dodged my attack, almost biting me. I should have took this as a sign of bad luck and just returned home. But instead, I was optimistic about the day and continued on my killing spree. I'll admit, the battle axe works extremely well, often one-shotting the dead. After a little while, I discovered a motorcycle with 12 gauge rounds we needed. I started feeling really good after that. This week, nay, this whole run has been going really well. To keep the good luck flowing, the last car in the parking lot had a good amount of fuel inside. I was about to head home when I noticed a group of about 5 dead in front of the building. Feeling confident, I went to go take them out. I should have checked my moodles beforehand. I was also not yet used to the delay of the battle axe and was caught off guard, being grabbed by the horde. That one was bad. I ran away and checked my wound. Not good. But instead of letting what happened to us in our last run happen again, I immediately jumped into the truck and returned home. So I grabbed a saw and went to the medical room, closed the door, and prepared the area. Then it was time to cut off my arm. wasn't sure if I'd be able to stitch it up tonight since I was already extremely low on health. So to be safe, I just took antibiotics to help with my infection, ate a lot of food to stay saturated, and changed the bandage on my torso. I also took some painkillers to help with the slight pain I might be feeling, then went to sleep on the hospital bed. Upon awakening, it was time for surgery once again. I slipped off the bandage and quickly stitched up the wound. Everything went extremely well. I thought I had another laceration on my forearm, but it was just a leftover bandage from my earlier injury. After returning the crowbar to its rightful position, I indulged in a large breakfast. Around this time, I noticed some of the animations are a little buggy now that I'm missing an arm, but let's just pretend we don't notice it. After 574 zombies killed in 1 month and 5 days, Shane Stevens has had his worst week yet, losing his arm in the process. It's now day 36, and let's see if we can survive another video. I started off with some reading, smoking, and filling my bottle up to get rid of some noodles. It was dinner time now, since the previous episode we left off pretty late, so I prepared a stir fry when I heard a zombie knocking at the door. Once again, the cafeteria door was broken. While the stir fry was cooking, I placed pots of water in the stove as well to sterilize. I went to replace the bandage on my arm, and where I had made the cut was now infected. I disinfected the area and placed a new bandage on it. Afterwards, I ate the stir fry I made, remade the door outside that had been broken, and went to place in planks for the windows, and realized I wasn't able to. I may no longer be able to hammer the nails in due to missing an arm. There are prosthetics I can make with the mod I have, but we need to find a recipe beforehand. I spent a little too much time lollygagging outside, and a couple of dead decided to come up and scare me. When I had finally killed them, it was the early morning. I drank some bourbon when I returned to my room before heading off to bed. When I woke up the next day, it was extremely late, so I decided to spend the day reading up on my skills. Before that though, I went outside to try and plank up the windows again, but still no luck. And then I went to the medical room to clear my wounds. Afterwards, I grabbed Medical Volume 1 to start reading and returned to my room, where I drank alcohol and read for the rest of the night. Finally, I'm back to waking up at a normal time. Jane hadn't been clean in a while, so I grabbed a bar of soap and went outside to clean myself. This took way longer than I expected, so I literally spent almost a whole day just cleaning myself off. Now that we were finished though, I went to the kitchen to eat some food. Another night of random food before it spoils. Nothing like cheese and yogurt for dinner. Yummy! Before I went to sleep, I smoked a cigarette, took some painkillers, and read a book to calm myself down. Day 39, I began with some painkillers to relieve the soreness. After I went to grab some breakfast, I noticed the door was once again broken. Once the dead were cleared, I ate some cheese and moved the spoiled food from out of the fridge to the trash can outside. Then I tried to fill up the generator using the almost empty gas can, but I couldn't pour the liquid inside. Confused, I went out to the truck to collect a gas can. Luckily, when I returned outside, I was now able to add it to the generator. Once it was full, I dried myself off using towels from the kitchen, and for dinner I prepared a stir fry since the past couple meals have just been cheese and yogurt. While it was heating up, I went ahead and threw a couple of eggs in there to cook along with it, and a pot of water to sterilize. Then I drank a beer before heading off to sleep for the night. When I awoke the next morning, Shane was starting to feel queasy. I remember a few weeks back we had found a medical serum. Thinking this may be the cure to the infection, I went ahead and drank it. I don't think it's the infection from the bite, it's probably just from cutting my arm off instead. Following that, I ate the rest of the stir fry and returned to the medical bay, where I continued reading First Aid Volume 1 and until I became hungry again. I smoked a cigarette and filled up my bottle while it was cooking. When I finished eating, I went to the administrator's office where I grabbed my metalworking gear and began to start leveling up my skill. I continued dismantling items all the way until 11 p.m., where I returned to my room for a beer and then went to bed. I started day 41 with a smoke, then got right to work on leveling up Shane's metalworking. Once the propane torch was out of fuel, I ran around the room grabbing reading material that was left from when I took apart the desks. Afterwards, I went to the kitchen to finish off the stir fry for dinner, and then returned to my room for the night. Once I woke up, it was right back to metalworking. After a few more hours of that, I did some reading in the library to clear more of my noodles, and then ate some candy from the kitchen. I haven't touched it since we found it in the grocery store, but I figured now would be a good time. I was still nauseous, and it didn't seem like it was going away. Hopefully this wouldn't be the last night. Dang, Shane's hair is getting long. After drinking some alcohol, I decided to go ahead and go to sleep. If you're enjoying this video, consider leaving a like. It's quick to do and really helps out the channel. Also, if you have any suggestions on how I can improve the videos, comment them down below. Anyway, thank you all for the support, and let's get right back into the video with day 43. Upon awakening, I realized my body temperature was extremely high. We weren't in any immediate danger, so I stripped down some of my clothes to maybe help with the fever. Once I had stripped down, I got to work leveling up my metalworking again. I started in the bathroom where I dismantled sinks and toilets. I'm thinking maybe I craft some storage boxes and make these bathrooms into additional storage rooms. Most of the toilets still had water in them, and I didn't want to waste it, so I left them for now. Now starting to get hungry, I made my way to the kitchen for lunch. After eating, I decided to head outside to ensure that zombies wouldn't roam over to the school while I was sleeping. Then I sat on the reading mat in the library and continued reading the first aid book. When I started to get tired, I went into my room where I had a cigarette and drank before sleeping through the night. When I woke up on day 44, I started by checking my infection. It was still there. I wanted to disinfect it before putting a new bandage on it, so I went to the medical room. Upon arriving, I tried to flick on the light switch and it wouldn't work. I bandaged up and then went to grab the truck to bring it around. Once the Jenny was full again, I prepared a stir fry for lunch. Hopefully our farm out back will bring us a bunch of fruits and vegetables to add to our meals as well. While I was eating, I threw a pot of water in the stove to sterilize and then added it to the water cooler. I figured since I had been leveling up Shane's skills so much this episode, I may as well patch up my clothes. There were a few holes in some of the items, and once they were patched up, I went out to the garden to check on the crops. Most seemed to be doing fine, but there was a tomato that had a disease. I'm new to this whole farming thing, so tell me down below if there's anything I need to do to this crop, or if it'll be okay. The health is still flourishing, so maybe it will be okay. Since it was raining right now, I figured I'd go around the yard to see if I could find anything. I found a branch, a cricket, a log, twigs, and a cockroach. I placed the log with the rest outside and tried to add one of the bugs to the mousetrap, but I wasn't able to. Maybe I can add cheese to it. I'll try to remember for next episode. When I returned to my room, I had accumulated a plethora of noodles throughout the day, so I went ahead and went to bed. Jane was still nauseous from the infection that occurred in the last episode. It seems her temperature has gone down ever so slightly, so maybe this is a good sign. I put away the welding equipment and re-equipped my headgear before taking painkillers as I made my way into the medical room, where I filled my canteen and smoked a cigarette. Once I arrived to the kitchen for breakfast, I opened the 8 egg cartons I had in the fridge, so I would realize I needed to use them before they go bad. The yogurt had also gone stale, so I started eating some of it as well. I still wanted to find another generator to power the rest of the base. Before I headed out, I checked my map to decide where I wanted to search. Instead of heading straight towards houses with sheds, I figured I'd go around to the nearby houses that hadn't been looted yet, whether they had a shed or not. Maybe this will help with the roamers that have been coming back to the base. The garage of the first house had 3 empty gas cans, a fuel tank, and a hand axe. Inside I grabbed thread, read a comic book, and then found a closet with a jerry can and fishing gear stored away. After sneaking into the neighboring house, I came away with food and welding equipment. I'll back the truck in here to grab this. When I got to the kitchen, I found more canned goods, so I took the time to go ahead and eat up before I continued the looting. Once everything was stored in the truck, I drove up to get the metalworking gear, and then backed into the other garage to collect the gas cans, before heading back home for the night. When I arrived, I unloaded the gas cans from the truck before drinking myself to sleep. Day 46, I started by cracking open a can of corned beef for breakfast. When I finished, I emptied the rest of the truck from yesterday. Then I decided to put all the empty gas cans back inside the truck because today I wanted to return to the gas station to fill them all up. Along the way, I stopped a few times to kill groups of zombies that I noticed. Also looked inside a garage, but no generator. But it did have some mechanical and metalworking gear. There were tons of dead at the gas station and the surrounding areas, so I used my truck to kill them instead of risking my life or wasting tons of effort. I tried to hop out on my own after a while of letting the vehicle do all the work, but I was quickly overwhelmed, so I jumped back in. When the area finally seemed cleared, I jumped out to start filling it up, but more zombies. Finally, I have a few seconds of free time. I filled up half of them, but decided to leave since I was developing a lot of negative noodles. I didn't want to get caught out here with all of these. I took the scenic route on the way home to look for a bookstore, but no luck. After setting the full gas cans outside, replacing his bandage, and storing away the metalworking gear, Shane Stevens headed off to sleep. When I awoke, I started the day with a canned fruit cocktail, yogurt, and eggs for breakfast. After, I headed to the library where I cleared some noodles before getting my day started. I drove around trying to find a bookstore for a few hours, then found myself at the two houses I searched earlier. After marking them off on the map, I headed to the streets south of the school to start clearing out the houses there. But first, we need to clear this horde. First house I arrived at had a family of conspiracy theorists inside, but they expected aliens, not zombies. I took what I could from the kitchen, eating a bit while we were here. The rest of the house was fairly empty, so I ventured next door. Before I went inside, I took a second to smoke a cigarette, then went in where I dismantled radios, dried myself off, and took the food from inside the kitchen. Once I was finished up here, I returned home to deposit the food, and of course, a group of the dead followed me home. Before I headed to bed, I filled up the generator with fresh fuel and marked off the houses I searched. I changed my bandages when I awoke the next day. The wound was still infected, so I went ahead and disinfected it. My crowbar was nearing its final stage of life, so I attached a spare to my sling. I ate yogurt and eggs for breakfast, then took painkillers before heading out to start my day. The first house on our list to search today had tons of food inside. I threw it all in the truck, then went into the next house where I dried myself off, then raided the kitchen for food. So far today, I've only really found food, but maybe the third house will have better loot. Well, at least there was shotgun ammo. Figured I'd go ahead and search one more house before heading home, so once I deposited the loot so far into my truck, I'd made my way over. Apparently, they were having a party right as the world turned to shit. They were probably too drunk to even know what was happening. I collected the alcohol and sodas in the living room before heading to the kitchen where there was more food to grab. Finally, I headed back to my truck where I drove home for the night. I noticed a herd while cleaning out the truck, so when I finished up, I took vitamins and killed them before I headed to sleep. When I started off day 49, I realized I had acquired an infection on my left arm. Yes, the same forearm that got cut off 2 weeks ago. Hopefully not die from something stupid, I went ahead and placed a bandage on it. Then I ate chocolate for breakfast since we had plenty of food now. Today, I wanted to have an easy day, since so far this week has been pretty busy. I relocated the television to where it will be accessible to the generator. I started with exposure survival, which leveled up my farming. Next, I threw in survival instinct, which ended up just being a waste of time, because I don't think it gave me any XP for any skills. After those two were finished, I went back to the library and got a few more VHSs. When I finished up, I prepared a roast for dinner using a bunch of eggs. Then I took painkillers and smoked a cigarette while I cooked. When I finished eating, I disinfected my cuts and changed my dirty bandages, then headed to bed a little earlier tonight. Due to that, I woke up early the next morning, and also probably because I'm in a little bit of pain again. I took painkillers to ease my aching from the night and got breakfast from the kitchen, before heading out to see some zombies had come over during the night. Once they were cleared, I hopped in my truck to get an early start to the day, heading over to the south street and continued looting the houses. When I snuck into the first, I was ambushed by a few zombies inside. Who were able to do a decent amount of damage to me. Afterwards, I drank a juice box in the kitchen and continued looting the rest of the food before heading back to the school. I didn't want to risk being outside with this many injuries, so I decided to stick around the house again. After taking painkillers and smoking to clear away my noodles, I changed the bandage on my lower torso to reveal another infection. Great. We might be having an increased chance of being infected due to our body and clothes being covered in blood and guts, so I grabbed a bottle of dish soap and headed outside to clean myself. Hopefully this will help out. I tended to the farm while I was out here. The lettuce had gone bad. I guess it becomes harvestable quicker than I realized. So I removed all the plots containing the rotten vegetable. Luckily, our radishes were still good and bearing seeds. I didn't realize how much food you got back from farming, so I think I planted way more than I needed just for myself. Maybe the next harvest I'll plant fewer plots. I threw a bunch of the radishes into the freezer so they would stay fresh for longer, then finished up the roast from a few days back. Day 51 wasn't recorded, and of course, it had to be a pretty event-filled day, so I'll try to describe it as best as I can. After doing my morning routine, I headed out to the south street again. Along the way, I was able to find an antibiotic that was able to cure some of the infections I had accumulated. I was also able to find a garage, but came up with no generator still. Now I find myself in a survivor's house where I found tons of guns and ammo inside. But now that we're extremely tired, let's sleep away the night on the cold bathroom floor. When I awoke from my uncomfortable sleeping position, I filled the canteen using the bathroom sink and ate canned spaghetti. I also took painkillers before sneakily exiting through the back window. Now back at the truck, let's check out what I found yesterday. A new crossbow, a revolver, a shotgun, and a few more weapons as well. But what I also found out off camera was that since I'm now missing my left arm, I can no longer hold two-handed weapons. That sucks. I then drove the truck a little further up the street so I can finish looting the last two houses. Nice, a double holster. The first house had a shed, but no Jenny inside. The house stored food and winter clothing. I took the hat, but left the rest since we were usually hot anyway. The last house didn't have much else besides more food, so I returned back to the base since the street was now completely looted. Upon arriving back, I spent a few hours unloading the truck and added the revolver to my holster, and grabbed a few extra rounds just in case. After I had unloaded everything, I smoked a cigarette, filled the generator, and finished the rest of the stir fry before heading off to sleep for the night. Day 53, I started by checking up on the crops outside. I really don't want anything to spoil again. The strawberries and tomatoes seemed fine for now, so I went around searching the yard for anything. I came away with a cockroach and a map of rosewood. Along my way around the perimeter, I came across a group of dead gathered outside, so I hopped over the fence and tried to clear them out. Probably should have done this a little safer, but hey, we got it done. So I jumped back over the fence where I continued searching. When I finished up, I was starting to become hungry again, so I grabbed some VHSs from the library to watch while I spent some time cooking. I figured I'd go ahead and make a salad for lunch so I could use some more of the radishes. By the way, if you hear any scampering in the background, that's my cat running around trying to chase a bracelet. I watched Exposure Survival while I ate, leveling up my trapping and foraging. Then I collected the pot of water from outside to sterilize, and instead of adding it to the water cooler, I made a stew using it, which, if I remembered correctly, is my first stew of the run. I read my first aid book while it cooked, and after eating, I slept through the night. Of day 54. I checked my body temperature before we started the day. Finally back to normal, so I re-equipped my headgear and made my way to the medical room, where I took painkillers, cleaned my dirty bandages, and had a smoke. When I got to the kitchen, I decided to check the nearby area to ensure it was safe before I ate breakfast. On my way back in, I went ahead and filled the water cooler as much as I could, then I opened my map to figure out where I wanted to go. In the last video, we searched the street south of the school, so to continue ensuring the surrounding area was safe, I wanted to loot the last few houses around the school. And good thing I did, because I ran into a herd right up the street. Okay, maybe there are too many zombies to take out just using my crowbar, so I jumped back into my pickup truck and drove them over. Yeah, that was a lot easier. The first house I started looting had canned food and a huge jug of water in the kitchen. The rest of the house was empty, but I did find a pistol and one of the dead bodies inside. When I arrived at the second house of the day, I went ahead and changed my bloody bandages before I got to looting. Nice, a box of cereal. That was rude. When I was done looting the house, I drove the truck up a little further up the street so I wouldn't have to walk as far. Then I jumped through the window, but found nothing in the house, besides a couple of food items in the kitchen. There were many curtains along the windows, and I haven't collected any in a while, so I grabbed a few before I exited the house and made my way back home. Ah, crap. Got a scratch on my foot. I'll just get into my truck to safely bandage up. When I finally arrived home, I took painkillers as I made my way into the medical room to repair myself. I placed some of the curtains along the windows in the cafeteria, then drank myself to sleep in my room. Now on day 55, I removed my bandage to reveal the scratch had healed overnight. I smoked a celebratory cigarette as I made my way outside to clear out the truck. For breakfast, I made a bowl of oatmeal to spice up my boring diet. I wanted to make another door in the library here, so I can have another way to access the room. But when I tried to equip my sledgehammer, I was unable to hold it with only one hand. Well, that sucks. So I went ahead and grabbed a book and some tapes and headed to the TV. The first tape leveled up my cooking a bit, but not enough to get to the next level. So I put another one in and was finally able to get it up to 3. Afterwards, I went to check up on my crops outside, and they're still doing well. Hopefully I'll be able to harvest them soon. Like usual, once I was done, I went around the yard searching for anything I could find. Twigs and a stone were all I was able to come away with. For dinner, I prepared a stir fry. Well, it's more of an omelet, but whatever. While it cooked, I took the time for a smoke and to take some painkillers, and when I finished eating, I headed to my room for the night. Day 56, I started with a salad for breakfast. Gotta use these radishes before they spoil. When I finished up, I checked on my mechanics at my truck before heading out, and the hood condition was starting to deteriorate, and my mechanic skill still needs to be higher before I can repair it, so it's gonna have to stay like this for now. The last few houses we needed to search are all on this street, so let's head over. When the outside threat was taken care of, I made my way into the first house. The kitchen of course had food, and in a closet I found 4 sheets that I took with me. When I exited, I noticed 2 decent sized groups of zombies, so I tried to sneakily lure one of them over, but attracted the entire group. Well, here we go. Thanks for the shotgun slugs. I wanted to give myself a break before I took on another group, so I started looting the house. I had a bunch of snacks on the floor, like alcohol, chips, and soda, and much more food in the kitchen too. Ah, crap. Luckily it didn't get me. When I eventually arrived to the next house, I began looting it. Inside, I found a liquor cabinet filled with alcohol, then dried myself off using a towel I found in the washing room. The kitchen had more food than I expected, so I snacked a little while I continued looting the house. The last stop was in the garage, before I returned back to my truck. I wanted to loot one more building before I went home, so I drove up to the next house on the street, and in the garage I found a gas can along with some planks. But when I stepped through the door, I realized there were still occupants living here. I found a flashlight to replace mine in the closet. There wasn't much food in the kitchen, but I was able to dry myself off with a few hand towels. In the bathroom, I found time to take a few vitamins so I wouldn't be as tired, and good thing I did, because once I got back to my truck, I had to defend myself from the incoming intruders. When I was finally back at the school, I just wanted to get in bed, but I knew the generator was going to be empty, so I filled it up before heading that way. Day 57 started out how most days have recently, with some painkillers and a cigarette. The storage closet was starting to become overfilled, so I needed to start storing my items elsewhere. Luckily, we still had tons more space for more food, but we're going to need to put the loot we start finding in the office for now. And while I was in here, I used more of the curtains I found earlier on the windows, and ended up making my way all the way into the lunchroom. They're always getting in. When I eventually finished clearing out the truck, I filled up my canteen using toilet water. Yummy. Once they're all empty, I want to come in with my welding torch to destroy them all. Maybe I'll make this room into a storage room and connect it to the other bathroom from the teacher's lounge. I think I mentioned this in a previous video, but y'all tell me what you think down below in the comments. For dinner, I used a cooking pot I found yesterday to prepare a stew, and while it heated on the stove, I smoked a cigarette and read up on First Aid Volume 1. After I indulged in the egg, black bean, and beet stew, I drank red wine to wash it down before heading off to sleep. Before I ended this episode, I wanted to finish clearing up the street from earlier, since only a few houses remained. So after I ate breakfast and cleared out a few roamers, I jumped in my truck and headed over. When I got there, the other herd I had noticed a few days back was still lingering around, and since the hood of my truck was starting to get a little low, and Shane's mechanic skill wasn't quite high enough to repair it yet, I decided to fight them in hand-to-hand combat. But after incurring so many injuries over the past few months, Shane finally received a wound that he couldn't recover from. Thank you all so much for the support on Shane's journey, and I promise if you saw my community post a few days back, I was not trying to spoil anything. I posted it literally a day before I died, and I didn't want to delete it afterwards to make anything suspicious. So if you saw that, I'm sorry. But if you didn't see that post and have a recommendation on what the challenge for my next run should be, comment it down below. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and if you're not yet subscribed, consider doing so. It's quick to do and really helps out the channel.